Secretary, for joining us this morning, and I'm very grateful for your generosity and the time you've shared in meeting with us. You've got a monumental task ahead of you in reforming the largest government agency beyond the DoD. So I really appreciated your comments about personnel and money, and that necessarily more isn't better. Unfortunately, and I get it, I understand where it comes from, but too often my colleagues on the other side of the aisle think that more money is the solution to every problem. And it clearly isn't. But I would tell you that as a veteran and one who's charged with representing the veteran interest of my constituents and those across the country, all I care about is the right solution. We want to spend every dollar necessary to make good on our promises, nothing more. We want as many people as it takes, but no more than that. The job of the VA is not to employ as many people as it can. It should only employ what's necessary to deliver for the veterans. But on that, a couple things I want to dive into. I know you're looking at a lot of these, but just to make sure that they're on your radar screen. Research funding, for example, some inefficiencies we've seen in the clinical trial processes. Medical and prosthetic research, great topic, great idea. Who would not want to spend as much money as is necessary to do the job there? We're spending northwards of $900 million a year. I think some across the aisle would say, great, let's spend $1.25 billion. That would make it better. Unfortunately, from some of the studies I've seen, you may have seen some of these, as much as $550 million of that is wasted each year, not going to its design purpose. And the goal there is to achieve the end in mind. We see excessive spending on recruitment and third-party vendors. In many cases, we're spending $20,000 to $30,000 to recruit a veteran into a program, whereas comparable studies like that, clinical trials on the private side, may be $1,500 to $2,500 a patient. That's a waste. We see a lot of chronic under-enrollment in programs. There's, you always hear the highline ones that are most egregious, but somewhere there's only a handful of participants in studies. These things are on autopilot. They go year after year after year, and the people that are receiving money have no incentive to fix the system. They're getting their money. They go on about their way. Or is that something you're looking at, and how can we reform this?
Yes, we are. And just to go off, so there's been some concern about this, and let me just very clarify, because we're trying to get a good handle on what we're doing and how we're going about this. There's been no research trials have been canceled, period. That's just, it's not happened. But we are looking at how many we have going, because you sort of mixed two issues here. You got research that is going on in other areas, and then clinical trials, which are a little bit different. I appreciate you bringing them both up, because they need to be talked about. One of the things that concerned me as we started looking into this, and is one of the reasons why I put a pause on our research in particular from digging into this, because we're trying to make sure we do it right. They all end at different times, different contracts coming up, is we wanted to get a good handle to make sure what was working and what wasn't working. I know this may come as a surprise to some, but we had no, especially on the clinical trial side, let me go over to that side for a second, we had no good way of managing it. In fact, we have no centralized management of our clinical trials. And right now, I believe there's about 1,500 clinical trials going on. And remember, which is a lot. Yeah. But also, I think taking into account here that clinical trials are not separating from healthcare. There's been some concern in some reports and others that veterans were being denied healthcare, and there was either because they were confusing clinical trials, which are extra and above the healthcare normal. So we're trying to get a handle on what we do have, what's working, what's effective, and how we make sure of that. Our research side is going to continue, because we've had some of the VA is one of the world's leader, especially in prosthetics and other issues, polytrauma, those kind of things, and we're going to continue that emphasis as well.
Okay. On the personnel side, last Congress I had the privilege to serve on the VA authorizing committee. We had whistleblowers coming to us complaining of sexual harassment. As we started digging into this, we were uncovering more and more where when whistleblowers would come forward, an investigation would start, rather than get to the bottom of them and get justice for those victims, people were being either allowed to retire or transfer, and then the investigations would be shut down. And in many cases, these people would leave the VA and then only to go to another government job in another agency. I've got a bill, a bipartisan bill, to try to address that. We're going to go forward with it. But from where you are can you give us a commitment that when people do come forward and they're courageous enough, that we're going to root out the evildoers and get rid of them?
Yes, that's one of my primary concerns right now, because there has been a culture, unfortunately, in many agencies, but also at the VA, and it's what I call fail up. Right. And that is, they failed at a certain job, and I have an example of this in just very specific, close to home, in which a senior leader failed and was documented failing, and the answer is to put them into the VISN level in a sort of advisory role. When I found that out, I said, no, that's not what we're going to do. And we started the proper procedures, given all that needs to be, to put this person on administrative leave. They're not going to be a part of what's happening. I think this is the one thing that has been frustrating to all of members of Congress on both sides when we see egregious acts that we cannot take care of without going through a process that ends up many times not getting the intended result. But I will just make this commitment to everyone on both sides of this aisle. If you hurt a veteran and you're working for the VA, you will not work for the VA. That is my commitment, and there's a higher cost to keeping bad people in than there is ever a higher cost in getting rid of them.
Right. Thanks, Secretary. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.